And please keep it going for David Rodriguez. It had been about 3 weeks since I found out that I was getting divorced and that I was the one that would be moving out. And I still saw my wife's face everywhere. I literally saw her face everywhere. She was running for elected office. And she was in every store window, on every sidewalk, and every doorway. And the worst part was that her campaign colors were our wedding colors. The whole city of San Francisco had been transformed into a seafoam green nightmare. But the nights were even worse because the nights were when I had to look at myself. And I didn't always like what I saw. And every night was worse than the last until one night so painful that I did what every atheist does in that situation. I prayed to God for a miracle. And I could almost feel my abuela's eyes glaring down on me from heaven. Oh, David, so now you have time for God. I fell asleep and woke up with a jolt. Was it my miracle? I grabbed my phone, nothing. And then I realized that what had woken me up was a feeling deep inside. It felt like someone had injected my dentist into my spleen and told him if he wanted to save his family, he had to scrape his way out. I was staying with my friend Catherine, and I ran downstairs and burst into her bedroom. And when she realized the person with an owie wasn't her 5-year-old son, she screamed at the top of her lungs. Her husband was a doctor, and he diagnosed me with a kidney stone and took me to the hospital. And as I threw up into a bedpan, I thought, Abuela, this is about the kind of miracle that your God would grant. Fast forward 2 months later, and I did what, I don't know if you know this, every divorced man is contractually obligated to do. I got on Tinder. And against all odds, I met the most amazing woman. Her name was Rue. She was a doctor, and she had almost this magical aura where perfect strangers would just open up to her about their entire life story within seconds of meeting her. And so it was because she was so amazing that I wasn't surprised at all when she came over and told me she never wanted to see me again. She said, I've wasted too much time in my life on emotionally unavailable men. Yeah, good for her. I wanted to tell her how I felt about her because I hadn't yet, but I was afraid and scarred, so I just looked at my knees and just waited for her to walk out forever. When suddenly I felt something deep inside. It was another kidney stone. I jumped up and started going, not again, not again. She looked at me like I was crazy, said, maybe we can get coffee in a couple months. I said, you know what, it's a kidney stone. You know what I think would really feel better if I took a shower? I think a warm shower would really relax me. And she looked at me and she said, well, I think that an ibuprofen and just calming down would be what I would recommend. I knew what she was implying that her opinion as a doctor was more relevant than my opinion as a man. I got in the shower, and you know what? I did feel better. Until I fainted. My head hit the linoleum, and the next thing I knew, my clothes were back on, and I was being crammed into Ruth's smart car. What hospital do you go to? Kaiser. Hey, isn't that where you work? Yes. Yes, it is. So back on the hospital bed, with Rue reading her Kindle next to me, trying to avoid eye contact with her coworkers. The doctor walks in and says, hey, I was looking at your CAT scan, and I think that's actually the same kidney stone from 2 months ago. Yeah, those suckers can just pop up when you least expect them. The kidney stone from the night I prayed for a miracle. Hey, David, you see what God did there? Yeah, Grandma, I'm making the connection. You thought he wasn't listening, but he always is. Grandma, hey, you look so skinny. You need to go to Sizzler's $5.99 buffet. Grandma, I don't have time to talk about it. It's condos now. I have the most amazing woman in this room, and whether it was chronic dehydration or Providence, I have one more chance to tell her how I feel about her, but I was so high on morphine, I couldn't form a coherent thought, so I just used a tried and true dating strategy. Just open your mouth and just watch what comes pouring out of it. Hey, Rue. I'm nobody. Who are you? Could you be nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. Or they'll banish us both. I'm nobody, Rue. Are you nobody? It was the rare occasion when Emily Dickinson failed to reach her audience. Rue looked at me like I was out of my mind. And the doctor finally broke the uncomfortable silence with, "You said he was your cousin?" So after Rue dropped me off, I didn't hear from her, unsurprisingly. But I had tasted what it felt like to make my life about taking chances on the future instead of looking back at the pain of the past. And I realized that nobody was going to rescue me. There wasn't going to be a miracle. Nobody, not Rue, not my ex-wife, not the Sizzlers buffet from 1985. I was on my own, and to make sure I understood it, God had to kick me in the balls twice. So I got into therapy, I started taking better care of myself, I put the art on the walls, I exercised, and then one night, I was woken up in the middle of the night, and this time it was my phone, and it was Rue. She said, "Hey, I'm sorry you haven't heard from me in a while, but there's this thing called the Moth, and I have an extra ticket, and I think you'd really like it. No offense, you're kind of dramatic." So I went to the Moth that night, and Rue encouraged me to put my name in the hat, and I went up on stage. I had nothing prepared, but I just used a tried and true strategy: open your mouth and watch what comes pouring out. This time it worked. And when I got off stage, I looked at Rue, and I found myself in a different kind of awkward silence and feeling a different kind of high. And I realized something about miracles, that we don't get to choose their size, their shape, or their position in our urinary tracts. Sometimes they're 3 millimeters. Sometimes they're, God help you, sometimes they're 5 millimeters. And sometimes they're 5'3". Thank you, Rue, for being the literal reason that I am on this stage, and thank you all.